case. All right, so let's start with a quick round of introduction here. I am Bhavna Bhatia, and I'm also joined by my colleague Leo Ramirez. We are compliance technical specialists from Microsoft, and we both work with US state and local government customers. Today, we will be talking about information protection. This solution was earlier referred to as Microsoft Information Protection. It is now rebranded as Microsoft Purview Information Protection. In case you haven't heard about it, we have done some major rebranding of our compliance solutions. On April 19th, we announced Microsoft Purview as a new product family. So your Microsoft Compliance Center will now be called Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. This Microsoft Purview offers a comprehensive set of solutions, and it also aligns with our One Microsoft philosophy so that you can govern, protect, and also meet compliance requirements of your entire data landscape, including both Microsoft as well as non-Microsoft data, and also your multi-cloud needs. Now, before talking about information protection, let's discuss some common challenges that are faced by our state and local government customers in their data landscape. We all know that cybersecurity landscape has fundamentally changed in the past few years. So phishing attacks, firmware attacks, ransomware, and cyber attacks are getting increasingly sophisticated. Though people are starting to transition back to office, we expect a future where remote and hybrid work is the norm, and it is here to stay. According to a research that's conducted by Forrester, they say remote and hybrid work has increased by around 300%. So for organizations, the corporate network is now suddenly without firm borders, so data security is more critical than ever. And to add to this, there is pressure of rising costs and also growing concerns around investment return. So our state and local government customers are facing tougher choices about security than ever before. In fact, we hear from our customers that their number one concern is protecting and governing sensitive organizational data and also reduce the risks. Now, here's an interesting article from Gowtech.com website on why government agencies could be a perfect target for hackers. Now, many of you here may be able to resonate with this. It says government organizations house highly sensitive information and they intersect with many different industries, so they can be a goldmine for hackers. Also, state and local government IT and security teams may typically be less funded than federal governments, and they are faced with a do more with less challenge, and they may have to heavily rely on third-party contractors as well. So all this adds to the risk and makes it an easy target to breach. The same article also mentions that you can secure your information using solutions that meet compliance requirements for all industry regulations that you follow. So Microsoft Purview Information Protection can help you here by providing you a framework, process, and capabilities through which you can protect your sensitive information. Microsoft's approach for information protection is to help you discover, classify, and protect sensitive information from wherever it lives or travels. Now, your organization may have data spread across various locations like Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Teams. Then there may be data on end users' machines, on on-prem network file shares, on third-party SaaS apps, on structured or unstructured cloud repositories, and so on. So knowing where your sensitive data resides is often the biggest challenge for many organizations. Our data classification solution can help you discover and accurately classify your data and also gain insights into the sensitive information. Once you know where your sensitive data resides, you can then efficiently protect it with information protection policies. You can also continuously monitor what items are labeled and how your labels are being used. You can then prevent the inappropriate sharing, transfer, or use of sensitive data across various applications and services. Data loss prevention policies can help the users take right actions when they are using sensitive data. And then finally, you can govern the data based on the classification, and you can also perform records management so you can comply with any regulatory obligations. In today's webinar session, we will focus on know your data, protect your data, and then prevent data loss. In our next webinar session, we will be talking about governing your data. The foundation of information protection is referred to as data classification service, and it helps you identify what types of sensitive information you have within the organization. We provide more than 200 out-of-the-box sensitive information types that are based on standard formats like credit card numbers, SSN numbers, driver's license numbers, code of diseases, and so on. And these are identified based on patterns, keywords, or checksum functions. If out-of-the-box sensitive information types don't meet your needs, you can create your own custom sensitive information types using regular expressions or a list of custom keywords. Sometimes customers may have millions of sensitive items inside a database, and they may want to protect that. You can create exact data match policies that will find matches with the data. And this database can be refreshed dynamically as well. In Exchange Online, you can create document fingerprints that are based on standard government forms or like HIPAA compliance forms, and you can prevent sharing of this kind of sensitive information. If data cannot be identified by patterns, then you can leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning based classifiers. We provide several out-of-the-box classifiers like legal affairs, agreements, then healthcare content, IT content, etc. Organizations can also create their own custom trainable classifiers if required. Once you have identified the sensitive information, you can protect that data using sensitivity labels. With sensitivity labels, you can classify the data like, say, public or internal only, confidential or highly confidential, and you can apply protection settings to the content based on that classification. Users can manually apply the labels to content, or you can automatically apply the labels based on the sensitive information that is found. These labels and protection settings will always travel with the file, even if it has left your organization. This information protection is built in natively into the desktop applications like Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and so on. So you don't have to install any client on the user's machine. Next, you can create data loss prevention policies here so that you can prevent any accidental or intentional sharing of data from Microsoft 365 locations like Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, or OneDrive for Business. These DLP policies can detect sensitive information types or the sensitivity labels on the content, and they can prevent data loss. The DLP policies and information protection work seamlessly across different platforms like Windows, Mac OS, iOS, as well as Android. You can also extend protection to content in third-party cloud solutions like Box, G Suite, ServiceNow using Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. This is our CASB solution. It was formerly referred to as MCAS or Microsoft Cloud App Security. If you have data in your on-prem SharePoint server or on-prem file share, you can leverage Azure Information Protection Scanner, and then you can inspect the on-prem repositories for sensitive information. And you can also classify content by applying sensitivity labels and then apply protection. You can extend data loss prevention capabilities to endpoints or user machines using endpoint DLP. Here, you don't have to install any endpoint agent. This endpoint DLP can audit or block users from copying sensitive contents to USB drives or network drives, then copying to clipboard, then also copying to Bluetooth devices or remote desktop sessions as well. You can also block printing of sensitive information or even block copying of sensitive information to personal cloud like Gmail, Google Drive, etc. Then Microsoft Purview Governance Portal helps you manage and govern your on-premises, multi-cloud, and also SaaS data. You can extend sensitivity labels from your Microsoft 365 Purview Compliance Portal to your non-Microsoft 365 assets like Azure Data Lake, Azure Files, AWS S3, and also you can extend to schematized data like columns in Azure SQL database, Cosmos database, etc. And in our Microsoft platform, our advanced compliance solutions are fully aware of the content that is protected by information protection. For example, insider risk management, communication compliance, and also advanced or premium e-discovery can locate and also act on the sensitive data types and labels. So to summarize, this information protection is a framework that consists of multiple compliance solutions to help you protect and govern your data. This is an entire ecosystem that is designed to work as one solution. Now let's take a look at the demo. Many customers ask us, hey, how do we get started with data protection? So you can start using your compliance manager that is inside the Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. And this provides a list of actions that you can perform to start protecting your data. So if I go to this Improvement Actions tab here, you can choose regulations like HIPAA, SAGES, NIST 853, and you will see a list of step-by-step instructions that you can perform for information protection. Completing these improvement actions here will help you improve your security as well as compliance posture. We talked about this in detail in last week's session for Compliance Manager. If you did not attend it, I highly recommend you check out the recording from last week's session. Now, to get started with information protection journey, organizations need to first know where their sensitive data resides. So for that, I'll go to this data classification tab. So here the overview dashboard will show me the top sensitive information types that are found in my organization. Example, you can see that there are credit cards, then social security numbers, and other sensitive types that were detected within my organization. If my organization has already created sensitivity labels, then this dashboard will show the top sensitivity labels that are applied to the content and also the locations where sensitivity labels were applied. Microsoft provides more than 200 out-of-the-box sensitive information types, and these can be used while creating sensitivity labels or DLP policies. These are based on standard formats like regular expressions or patterns or keywords. So example, if I search for SSN sensitive information template here, you can see the US Social Security number template. So if we click on this, it will show you how we identify whether a number is SSN and what patterns are being used. You can also test with sample data to validate this template. If you want to customize this, you can copy this template and you can create your own template as well. If these out-of-the-box templates don't meet your needs, you can create your own custom sensitive information type. So example, to identify employee IDs, you can create a custom sensitive information type based on regular expressions or patterns for your employee ID format. If you have a database with sensitive information, you can create a schema for that and then create a sensitive information for that using exact data match. You can then leverage this in your information protection policies to protect your data. If your content cannot be easily identified by either manual or automated pattern matching methods, you can leverage trainable classifiers. These classifiers identify an item based on what that item is and not by pattern matching. There are already some pre-trained out-of-the-box classifiers here that you can use. So example, we have agreements, then finance, HR, healthcare, and IT, legal templates, resumes, source code, profanity, and so on. When these pre-trained classifiers don't meet your needs, you can create and train your own classifier that are tailored to your organization's needs. There's a content explorer here that shows a current snapshot of the items that have a sensitivity label or retention label or that have been classified as a sensitive information type in your organization. So here, example, you can see there are around 498 items with SSN numbers that are detected across various locations like Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, and Teams. We can also drill down further into each location to find where that sensitive item resides. So example here, I can see a document within the SharePoint site. I can also check its entire path. It shows me what kind of sensitive information type is in this file. And I can also quickly preview the contents of the file to verify that sensitive information. There's an activity explorer here that gathers audit activities from multiple sources and shows DLP policy matches and sensitivity label activities as well. The exact data match, then trainable classifiers, content and activity explorer are all available in the higher G-file licenses. Now that we know what sensitive information is out there, we can start protecting it using sensitivity labels. So for that, let's go to the information protection tab here. So with sensitivity labels, you can intelligently classify and protect your sensitive content. You can apply sensitivity labels to files that are created in users' Office apps. You can also label emails, SharePoint sites, Teams, Microsoft 365 groups, and you can also extend these sensitivity labels to assets in SQL, Azure SQL, Azure Cosmos DB, then AWS RDS, and much more. These sensitivity labels that you create can be applied manually by your end users, or they can be auto-applied. And the labeled content can then be protected based on the settings that you choose here. So there are some examples of labels that I have created. So example is public label here only classifies the content and it doesn't apply any protection. While this internal only label that I have created here classifies the content as internal only and also ensures people outside the organization cannot access this content, even if it has left outside the organization. Then I've also created this highly confidential label here. This sensitivity label applies header, footer, and watermark to content, and it provides access to the labeled content to users only within a specific department or to users from a specific partner domain. So you can create your own sensitivity labels as per your organization needs. Then once these labels are created, you can publish them to all or specific users using label policies. And in label policies, you can also configure mandatory labeling to content, or you can apply default labels to content as well. To automatically label content at rest in SharePoint or OneDrive for Business, or auto label emails in transit, you can leverage auto labeling capabilities. First, you can run a simulation to know how many sensitive items will get the label. And if all looks good, you can turn on the policy and then you can apply the auto labeling to content. Manually labeling content is available within G3 licenses, whereas auto labeling content is available in higher G5 licenses. Now let's see some end user demos for information protection. So in this example that I'm showing you, my administrator has published sensitivity labels to end users. So my end user here is Megan. She can see the sensitivity labels when she's working inside the Word document. She can also manually apply the sensitivity labels here. Example, let's say she applies this internal only label. You can see that this document is now classified as internal only. So here you can see this lock icon. That means that this document is now protected. And this is protected in such a way that external users cannot access this content even if it is forwarded to them. Now, manual labeling may not be a scalable data protection option, right? Because end users forget to label or they may label incorrectly sometimes. So auto labeling can help you protect content at scale. So example here, my user Megan Bowen has uploaded a document in SharePoint site, and this document contains PII information. She forgot to label that document manually. But SharePoint auto labeling can now detect that this document contains PII, and it has automatically labeled and protected it accordingly. So here you can see that it says this file has been automatically labeled. Office apps have native capabilities to detect sensitive information in the document and can automatically apply label and also protect the content. You don't have to install any additional softwares. It's built right into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. So here you can see I'm inside Microsoft Word, and it has automatically labeled this document when Megan has added a sensitive information like bank account numbers. You can also apply sensitivity labels to an entire SharePoint site or team site, and then you can control privacy settings, external sharing settings, and control if you want to block accessing of sensitive sites from unmanaged devices. So you can see sensitivity labels drop down here when you're creating a SharePoint site and select the labels while creating the site. In this example, there's a new team site that is being created. Users can classify this team with a sensitivity label. If this internal only sensitivity label is selected, then the privacy of this team is automatically set to private. So you can see that the public option here is disabled by default for internal only sites. So that was about some of the information protection capabilities. Now let me hand it over to Leo, who will talk about data loss prevention. Over to you, Leo.
Thank you, BB. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
All right, thanks. All right, I want to start off by just stating that the data loss prevention capabilities that are built into the Microsoft Purview Information Protection solution, it's built in, and this helps organizations not only identify and protect sensitive information across cloud services like applications, devices, and even on-premise repositories. So we make it easy for you to apply DLP policies to prevent data leaks and provide context-based policy enforcement for data that's at rest, data that's in use, and even data that's in motion. The built-in data loss prevention capabilities are provided in Microsoft Teams, in SharePoint, on endpoints, and this includes Windows 10 and Windows 11, also on-premise file sharers, and even in third-party applications with our Defender for Cloud App Security solutions. Now, as you are very well aware, and as BB highlighted earlier, government agencies, they're constantly under attack. And of course, not all threats are external. Many times there's internal threats where users are inadvertently sharing sensitive information. And this is why it's critical for organizations to prevent risky and inappropriate sharing by number one, identifying sensitive data that needs to be protected, and two, implementing DLP policies to remediate and prevent sharing of sensitive data, whether it's intentional or accidental. Now, as you're going to see, the DLP policies with Microsoft Purview, they're easy to configure, and we provide plenty of options for protecting sensitive information in various locations like you see here. Now, policies can be easily configured in one place to meet multiple use cases for preventing data loss. This is the page where DLP policies are created in the Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. You can easily get started with one of the out-of-the-box templates that have pre-configured settings related to identifying and protecting sensitive data that may contain financial, medical, and health, privacy, or you can create your own custom template and start from scratch and build the policy yourself. Either option you choose provides you with a wizard that gives you step-by-step guidance to configure the policy. The next step is to choose the location where you want to apply the policy. And as you see here, we have options for Exchange, email, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, Teams, devices. This is where endpoint DLP is configured. We have options for third-party applications in our Microsoft Defender for a Cloud App solution. Also, on-premise repositories, and even Power BI. And as you see, these policies can be scoped to different users and groups. Now, many of our government customers, they're in a shared tenant. These policies can even be scoped to different agencies within the tenant. The DLP policy also walks you through the process of creating rules. And here's where you define conditions, exceptions, and actions, also notifications. Here is where you can define the conditions for the type of sensitive information you want to detect and identify. This is an example of ITIN numbers, social security numbers, and passport numbers. This is an example of some of the conditions that can be applied to a DLP rule for email. And as you see here, there are plenty of options that can meet various use cases, whether the condition contains sensitive information. You can even, the sender IP address can be a condition, sender domain, even recipient or file extension. Here's an example of an action that can be applied within a DLP rule. So you can either block, this is for email, you can either block the email entirely for anyone outside of the organization when the email contains sensitive information, or you can choose the option to encrypt the email message so that only the recipient is able to decrypt the message. DLP policies can also be used to educate users so that they understand when they're violating a policy. You can configure the rules so that users get a policy tip when a violation is detected. They can also receive email notifications when a policy is matched. Additionally, admins can receive alerts and incident reports with details like what kind of content was matched, the risk level that's matching the DLP rule, and the count of sensitive information types. One last thing I want to point out about DLP policies is that you don't have to enable them right away. You have the option to test it out in test mode so that you're not impacting production, and gives you a chance to assess the effects of what this policy is going to do. And so this is a good place to start, so you're not impacting production users before you actually test the policy. Definitely highly recommend you test it first. So now that we've seen some of the admin experience when it comes to creating and managing DLP rules and policies, let's jump into what the user, the end user, sees as a result of these DLP policies being enforced. So this is an example of what happens in SharePoint. Now this red circle with a dash in the middle indicates that a DLP policy is matched for this file in SharePoint. And this apparently has highly confidential information. And this is just one mechanism for letting a user know that this file is protected and it has some sort of data loss prevention action. The user can also click on the details to get more information to educate them on why this may be a violation. Here we have an example letting the user know that this file cannot be shared externally. They can also, DLP policies can also be configured with an override. And this gives users the ability to override the policy and allow them to share this sensitive information, but provide a business justification if that's required by the policy and by the admin. This is an example of a user attempting to share a file from SharePoint to an external user who has a Hotmail email address. Immediately, the user's prompted and notified that this activity is not allowed. Again, we're seeing how DLP can educate users that are violating these policies, whether they're intentional or accidental. And this is important, especially in government agencies that are handling highly sensitive information that's related to regulations like HIPAA, CJIS, IRS 1075, and more. DLP can also protect messages in Teams chats. This is an example of a user named Megan who's chatting with an external user and is sending a message that contains sensitive information. Megan immediately receives a prompt that this message is blocked. And she can also click on this "What can I do" link so that she can learn more about why this is being blocked. Here we see that she gets the policy tip. This is being blocked because your organization doesn't allow this. Again, you can allow an override or not. That's an optional setting within the DLP rule. Now, having these policy tips can potentially minimize calls to the help desk, but it certainly reduces risk to the organization by enforcing this type of action. Now, let's talk about endpoint DLP. Endpoint DLP has a number of settings that can be configured globally to existing and new endpoint DLP policies. And this allows you to make global decisions for things like advanced classification. This is a setting that allows the Microsoft Cloud Service, data classification service, to scan items, classify them, and return those results to the local device. So, and this allows you to take advantage of things like exact data match and so forth. Now, we also have file path exclusion, which enables you to reduce noise in folders where sensitive information might be allowed. Additionally, you can control the level of access to specific applications that are whether or not they're allowed to have sensitive information or not. Now, there is a preview option also available, which allows you to use application groups in your DLP policies to enforce different access restrictions on those Windows devices. We also provide the ability to restrict unallowed browsers and domains from accessing sensitive information that are matching DLP policies. Now, why Microsoft Purview Endpoint DLP? Number one, there's no agent or software that's required for these endpoints. This is unlike many solutions out there. It's easy to configure, just like other Microsoft DLP solutions and policies. Onboarding is super easy. There's one console where you can manage all of your policies and alerts. It's native to Windows 10 and Windows 11. And these signals from Endpoint DLP extend to other Microsoft solutions like Insider Risk. And these are going to detect things looking for risky behavior from insiders. And this is typically a blind spot for many organizations. Additionally, it's cloud managed and cloud delivered, so there's no on-prem infrastructure required. Now, here are some of the prerequisites for Endpoint DLP. I'm not going to name all of them, just going to point out a few. Have to be running Windows 10, 1809 or later, Microsoft Edge. The device needs to be either Azure AD joined, hybrid Azure AD joined, or Azure Active Directory registered. This is a link to all of the requirements. All right, now let's get into a demo of Endpoint DLP. Here I'm on a user's workstation. Users working with a sensitive a sensitive file that contains social security numbers. Here are some of the actions that can be prevented or audited with Endpoint DLP. Say this user tries to copy these social security numbers from one application to another. This activity can be prevented. The user receives a pop-up notification saying that this action is blocked. Other activity, if a user tries to print this sensitive information, this can also be blocked. Same notification, this action is blocked. Now, if a user attempts to share this file to either a network drive or a USB drive, this activity can also be prevented with Endpoint DLP. Again, we see the notification letting the user know that this is unauthorized. Another activity that can be prevented is uploading to an unallowed application or browser. So this is a user trying to add that same file, uploaded to, added as an attachment in Google. As we see, this can be prevented as well. So plenty of options when it comes to Endpoint DLP. Going back to the slides. Okay. All right, and this is Activity Explorer, and this is where you can review activities that are related to DLP, where the rules are being matched, files that are being discovered in Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, on endpoints. This is an excellent dashboard for you to get a high-level overview of what's going on with those sensitive files in your organization. The alerts dashboard provides you with critical information that's needed for remediating and triaging DLP alerts. This is an example of some of the details that are provided. You can see information on the user that matched the rule, who they were sending the email to, the name of the rule that was matched, and the content that is matching the rule. So plenty of rich detail. But that's not it. These signals also integrate with another solution in our Purview stack that you'll be seeing in an upcoming webinar for insider risk management. So be sure to tune in for that. As you can see, the Microsoft data loss prevention capabilities are comprehensive and they provide multiple ways to meet your data protection use cases. And these can help you not only meet regulatory requirements, but also business requirements. Microsoft Purview Data Loss Prevention can be your agency's single data loss prevention solution for protecting sensitive information and preventing it from getting into the wrong hands. I'll now turn it over back to Bibi.
Thank you so much, Leo. That was a very good demo. Let me share my screen quickly here. So we have provided a few links here for the information protection resources. Please check out our public documentation and also deployment best practices. We also have a Microsoft Information Protection Ninja training that is available. You will be able to see the recordings of all our previous sessions on our YouTube channel. We will be sharing the links to the slides after the session. There are also several programs from Microsoft to educate you further and accelerate deployment of information protection features. If you have unified support, you can leverage several of our workshops that are listed here. If you want to see a demo of information protection capabilities or have any further questions, then please reach out to us at msslgcompliance@microsoft.com. I'm also going to put a link of that email ID inside the chat. All right, so now we will be opening up the mic for any questions.